Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for your patience. I will be your moderator for this excellent water panel. We are waiting for one final panelist to arrive, so it'll be another 5 minutes, but it will be worth the wait. Thank you all. can I invite all of our esteemed panelists to the stage, please?
Thank you. It's your microphone. Yes.
If we're ready to start, can one of the organizers give me a thumbs up? Thumbs up. Okay, amazing. Thank you again, everyone, for your patience. Just a couple flags for my esteemed panelists here. Whenever you want to speak, there is a button on your mic that you have to press on and off. Second, we are doing simultaneous translation with some lovely people in the back. So if you can speak slowly and clearly, that will help with the translation. Okay. Thank you all again for joining. My name is Shay Flynn, and I'm a Senior Director of Sustainability for the Coca-Cola Company for Eurasia and Middle East region. If you could not tell that I work for Coca-Cola by the vibrant color of my suit, now you know. So for today's panel, we will be discussing water resources, solutions, strategies, and the government's priorities for Uzbekistan. And I want to start off by setting the scene and getting us all on the same page, because I know this is an investment forum and we are not a room full of water experts. The World Resources Institute defines water stress as the amount of fresh water resources available as a proportion of fresh water renewable supplies. Now, in more simple terms, that means if the demand for water supply is greater, if the demand is greater than the water supply, you get water shortages, and that creates water stress. The higher the demand and the bigger that gap, the more water stress you experience. So for everyone in the room, Uzbekistan, by that definition, is the 34th most water-stressed country in the world. That's further exacerbated by climate change, especially in drought-prone regions like Karakopakstan, and the shrinking of the Aral Sea due to extensive irrigation. 80% of Uzbekistan's water resources depend on transboundary waters, so it's coming from neighboring countries. And the largest user of water in Uzbekistan is the agriculture sector, which also accounts for approximately 50% of the country's labor force and about 25% of its GDP. So you can understand why there is great importance on the conversation that we're having today around water security in Uzbekistan. Now, the good news is that this is not new news. We did not all wake up yesterday and decide, wow, we should really do something about water. This is something that many companies here on the stage and the government have been looking at for a long time to find solutions to create water security. The government has placed a huge emphasis on improving water efficiency. There are national and multinational corporations that are looking to enhance infrastructure. And there's widespread adoption of water-saving technology and digitalization. We at the Coca-Cola Company share this urgency to act because water is a business priority for us. Yes, it's vital to life and economies and the communities that we serve, but it's also the #1 ingredient in our beverages. Without water, there is no Coca-Cola Company. We have a very strong legacy of water stewardship. So for the last decade, we've successfully replenished over 100% of the water that we used in our finished beverages back to communities and the environment. And in 2025, we revamped our voluntary environmental goals and said, let's not just keep doing this on a global basis, but let's focus on specific water stress areas. So we're targeting 200 watersheds across the globe to make sure that we are working with our partners, the Coca-Cola Foundation, and our bottlers like Coca-Cola Ichijek here in Uzbekistan to ensure that we're doing the right projects to replenish water in the places that need it the most. One example of a project here in Uzbekistan is our partnership with UNDP. We have successfully worked with them through funding with the Coca-Cola Foundation to improve water security and access for communities in Kazakhstan, Navoiy, and Khorsem. I hope I pronounced all of those correctly. I practiced. And they successfully replenished 50 million liters of water on an annual basis. Our bottler, Coca-Cola Ichijek, is also improving water efficiency in its own operations through water circularity practices implemented this year in 2025. They're saving 64 million liters of water per year. They also do rainwater harvesting and have improved efficiency in production from 2 liters per every 1 liter produced to 1.6 liters. And this is just the beginning. We're going to keep going. Now, enough from me. I want to kick off the session and turn it over to the panelists who are the real experts on this topic. We have 7 representatives from across the public and private sectors that are going to share the Uzbekistan government perspective, private sector companies that are focused on water resource management, and development finance institutions. I would like to start with Mr. Deputy Chairman Rakhtumulov to share his perspective from the Uzbekistan government. Given the urgent need to address Uzbekistan's increasing water stress, what strategies is the government using to partner with the private sector and civil society? And how do you ensure that these partnerships address both the immediate challenges as well as long-term sustainability strategies for the country?
Good afternoon, Chair. Thank you for your question, and thank you for your good preparation. You have provided some figures, and if you allow, in order to make things more clear, I will add some more figures. Yes, you are right. Uzbekistan is double locked, and 96% of water available in Uzbekistan used not for drinking water, and remaining 4% is used for drinking water. Apart from this, 86% of water available comes from the surface water, and 14% comes from the underground water. What it means? It means that we are muchly dependent on trans-bordering rivers, and you are right, that's the problem of Aral Sea comes from. And the task of government, the task of our company is to provide that this 4% of drinking water should be used only for drinking water, not for agriculture, not for production, not for construction and other issues. For instance, your esteemed Coca-Cola company is also included in this 4%. It depends on the following, directions. First of all, of course, it's providing of the true and confirmed reserves of the water. Of course, we work closely with appropriate institutions, ministries, in order to assure the possibility of realization of other projects for the providing of population and consumers with pure drinking water. more figures, we have ongoing about 20 huge investment projects amounting for more than $2 billion US. The question is, will there be enough water if we prepare and realize such projects? Moreover, about 15 projects are under preparation, amounting the same another $2 billion US. Approximately until 2040, we want to realize for $4 billion US projects amounting. Will there be water if we prepare and realize such projects? That's the question. The other thing is, yes, you also mentioned about this digitalization, because it's not a secret, non-revenue water in our sector, I mean in the drinking water sector, is about 30%. It's officially. Unofficially, it's a little bit higher, and we don't hide this. Therefore, non-revenue water will consist of technical losses as well as commercial losses. It means the rational usage of the water, we have to work with the consumers in order to deliver, to send the message that the water is not priceless and it should be rationally used. Therefore, we have drafted the strategy of the development of the water sector until 2030. We have very ambitious goals to reach the coverage of drinking water supply to 95% from existing 80%. 15% for the next 5 years is very ambitious. Therefore, and we have also some negotiations and ongoing negotiations with the World Bank, namely ODED, ADB, and others, and they're helping us to correctly structure this strategy. And in a couple of weeks, we want to present to our esteemed president for the presentation. And the projects I mentioned, the amount is also included in this strategy. And we welcome all our consultants and counterparts to take an active part in this strategy. I'm ready for your further questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Deputy Minister, or Deputy Chairman. So, as you mentioned, you're developing the 2030 water development strategy that includes $4 billion by 2040. That's really impressive. And you're working a lot already with consulting services and different development institutions to help figure out what is the roadmap to realize those goals. We have a couple of those consulting services and development institutions here today. So I'd like to move to their perspective, starting with Chetan Kapoor from Synergy Consulting. Then we will include Odette Duarte Mushimpua from the World Bank and Husan Casanova from the Islamic Development Bank. The question that I have for you guys to follow on the government's perspective is, what are some of the challenges that you see in the short term and long term to achieving water security in Uzbekistan? And considering the advisory services, tools, and strategies that your organizations successfully deploy around the globe, what do you think are some of the most effective approaches that we can use and hopefully include in this 2030 water development strategy?
Yeah, thank you so much. I'll just try and take a couple of years back, when Uzbekistan started with the first range of projects, right? That is where you see most of the development financial institutions enter in this particular market. And till now, Uzbekistan has been the blue-eyed country for all these DFIs, ECAs, and there have been a number of projects, as Deputy Chairman rightly mentioned. There are more number of projects which are there in the pipeline. But what has happened is that there is an established precedence of these projects. There's an established precedence of a very strong sector law which is there in the country. and the country has benefited from all of these. And if you see on the panel itself, you have a number of water players from GCC and from Europe as well, which are participating in this particular market. The projects have moved, and there's a very strong, at least on the utility side. If you see the power projects, there's a very clear crystal path. But on the water side, I think the government needs to do a bit more. This sector is something which is very, very close and very important for the lending institutions, for all the various entities to finance. There's ample amount of liquidity which is available. It's just that the projects need to move ahead for the world to see, for other players to see, and for them to come over to this part of the world and participate. As I said, apart from DFIs and ECAs which are there on the panel, and you will hear from them directly as well, there's also an ample amount of credit from different sources. There are a large number of funds which are also looking at, for them again, water, wastewater, entire water chain is something which is very critical. It's a sector which is very important for them, and they are also willing to participate in some of these projects, although the financing will be suboptimal, but yes, that's another amount of liquidity which is available. The third important feature is that this if you see in GCC and in other parts of the world, there's a lot of private credit which is happening. That is something which is not there in this part of the country. But if you see more number of projects which are going to go through, you will see a lot many players moving towards private credit, which is going to enhance the overall pool of capital, and hence the number of projects as well. One thing which is very important, I'm talking purely from a developer or a financing institution perspective, if there's significant amount of action on the ground, right, that will translate into more impetus into inviting more players in this particular market, and more number of projects getting awarded, and that will give an impetus to entire the financial markets in terms of secondary market buyouts, so on and so forth. I think that is something which will eventually happen. It will take some time, I think, but as the deputy chairman rightly said, there is a very strong incentive for the regional and international players to come over this part of this country and invest, and this is what we are seeing. I mean, you will hear from our colleagues at Taka Water Solutions or an Al-Khor IEF or an Almar. They are all heavily wanting to invest in this particular market, but then projects need to move. There's a very, very credible performance which the country has displayed on the power side of it. The same thing needs to go for the water side of it and other sectors like social infrastructure, so on and so forth. So at least from my perspective, I mean, we stay very bullish. The sector laws are very strong. The contractual frameworks are very strong, very well adaptable to the international markets in terms of benchmarking, so on and so forth. So we see no reason as to why the sector should not fly out with more projects in the future. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Shia, and thank you for inviting me for this very interesting panel. To your question, I mean, beyond what Mr. Khurshid and yourself mentioned around, decreasing water availability and the fact that the resources are shared, we have significant infrastructure deficit. Just to zoom into the water and sanitation subsector, in Uzbekistan, we have about 7 million people who do not have access to safely managed water and sanitation. And if you think of wastewater, only a third of the wastewater is treated, and very few cities actually have functioning wastewater treatment facilities. So that gives you a perspective in terms of the challenge. But beyond the infrastructure deficit, there's how that infrastructure is managed. So having the right sort of skills and systems in place to help institutions like Usuf Taminat, but also the Ministry of Water Resources, who is responsible for irrigation, in efficiently managing sort of the water resources and enabling service delivery. Now, how are we, as a World Bank, sort of working to support the government of Uzbekistan? First of all, as Khurshid said, we are a long-term partner in the sector, and we are supporting the development of this strategy. And in terms of our current engagement, we have close to $700 million sort of investment projects divided more or less half-half between water supply and sanitation and sort of irrigation and water resources management. And our focus is, as I mentioned earlier, on sort of investing on infrastructure that enables service delivery efficiency, but doing that through partnerships. Because in the current environment, it's not just scarcity of water resources, it's also scarcity of financing. A financier or a government entity alone is not going to be able to deliver on this huge agenda. So it's really important that in that process, we think about partnerships. Partnerships between governments, partnerships between governments and sort of international financiers and other entities in the sector, but even most importantly, between these entities and private sector. Public financing alone is not going to address all the challenges the water sector has. So being this an investment forum, I want to pledge to everybody to utilize the space to start building these partnerships. Utilize public financing to leverage private capital and help the government address the challenges that we have. Challenges in efficiency that Khurshid has already mentioned, but also challenges around the systems that enable service delivery. The government is already working on multiple reforms, on tariffs, for instance. They are working also on asset registry and other things that are going to make it much easier for partners to then come and join the sector. And the World Bank, together with other financiers, we are ready to support you in that engagement, government, private sector, and all those partners interested in the sector. Thank you.
Thank you, Shea, for inviting me for the panel and also to address your questions. About the challenge, I would like to mention for the water security challenges in Central Asia. For the region, as Mr. Rahmatullayev mentioned, there are transboundary water management issues, tensions between the upstream and downstream countries over Amudarya and Sirdarya region, and competing priorities between hydropower with irrigation for agriculture. Also climate change impacts. Rapid glacier melting Pamir and Tian Shan mountains threatens long-term water supply. Increased frequency of droughts and floods exacerbating water scarcity. And aging infrastructure, as our World Bank colleague mentioned, there are Soviet-era irrigation systems, and dams lead to 30–50% water loss through inefficiency. Poor wastewater management and lack of modern treatment facilities, causing pollution on the ground and surface water resources, and agricultural inefficiency. Water-intensive crops still dominate agriculture sector in the region, using 90% of regional water resources. Outdated irrigation practices combined with disposal of untreated wastewater have been degrading soil. And environmental degradation, Aral Sea crisis, loss of 90% of volume since 1960s, causing health and ecological disasters. And this desertification and salinization affect 50% of irrigated land. Also socio-economic pressures, population growth and urbanization strain water demand. Food security risks due to unreliable water access, and how we address these challenges. Islamic Development Bank also as a World Bank, we are financing to infrastructure modernization. Also investments in irrigation and wastewater treatment plants and smart water management technologies to prevent groundwater pollution and soil degradation. We are investing to climate resilience projects, financing for drought-resistant crop adaptation, construction of climate-proof water reservoirs and flood control infrastructure. Also, we are increasing the capacity of the local communities and sharing the knowledge, training programs for policymakers and technicians on integrated water resource management, capacity development, water users association on operations and maintenance, efficiency and sustainability of the irrigation infrastructure, sustainable agriculture promotion, loans for farmers to adopt water efficient technologies, crop diversification, climate resilient crops, initiatives to reduce cotton monoculture and incentivize agroecology, and environmental restoration, support for Aral Sea rehabilitation, afforestation, wetland restoration, and also funding for solar and wind projects to reduce reliance on hydropower. And also we are partnering with other financiers like World Bank, Asian Development Bank, UNDP, and regional governments for scalable impact. If I will mention about our portfolio in the region, it's more than 1.5 billion US dollar we already approved for the projects in water sector in the region, and around more than 320 million for Uzbekistan. And in our pipeline also we have more than 200 million projects for Uzbekistan, and we will continue to support Uzbekistan in the water sector. It's our main priority in our strategy for Uzbekistan, and to also support to for the strategy you asked what we can include, because I haven't reviewed the strategy, and maybe I may repeat or emphasize some measures which already included in the strategy. We already started to collaborate through different platforms like country platform, or we have sector working groups in water where we're discussing the challenges and how we can help in this sector. Also promote integrated water resource management, apply integrated water resource management principles and consider the interconnectedness of water users. Leverage data sharing and technology, develop shared data systems for real-time monitoring of water quality, availability, and usage. Encourage policy and regulatory coherence. Harmonize policies and regulations across sectors, environment, agriculture, urban planning, industry, to avoid contradictory incentives. Facilitate cross-sectoral regulatory bodies or committees to oversee water governance. Also mobilize joint financing mechanisms, pool resources from public budgets, private investments, donor funding to finance integrated water projects. Explore innovative financing like blended finance, public-private partnerships and water funds. Also build capacity and raise awareness. Encourage collaborative innovation, like support pilot projects and innovation hubs that bring together experts from different fields to develop new water-saving technologies and management approaches. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for sharing your perspective. I find it really interesting, following from the Uzbekistan government perspective of like they have $4 billion that is going to go into securing water resources and improving water management in Uzbekistan by 2040. We have from the World Bank, 700 million, Islamic Development Bank, I think I heard 300 million, so that's another $1 billion. And what we've also heard is it's not enough. That money should be seen as catalytic. It's something that isn't designed to solve the problem, but to help bring others to the table to help improve water resource efficiency. I think we heard there's GCC, the countries have different private financing, and we're looking to the private sector to help come in and fill some of those gaps. So as if we planned it, there are 3 private sector companies here with a focus on water resource management that I would like to invite to answer our next set of questions. We have Sylvain Delaunay from the Suez Group, We have Arancha Mintia from Almar Water Solutions, and Mr. Abdul Wahad Sharif from Taka Solutions. My question for the three of you is, what lessons have your companies learned about managing water stress in similar geographies that you think could be applied in Uzbekistan? And do you have any specific tips for how these different solutions might be tailored to the local context to make them more effective? We'll start with you, Silver.
Thanks a lot. First of all, very happy to be there today with you. To be today with a state partner, Uzbekistan, with representative of IFI. As you say, very important to have you on board to finance, but not only, to elevate also the way to work, the legislation, and partner like Taka Water Solution, as we are working together in some consortium. Just briefly, Suez is a company of more than 165 years. Small joke, our name is coming from the Suez Canal, so in a certain way, the first private public partnership of the story. You insist on that, of the importance of the operation. I fully agree. To develop a water project, of course, you need financing, but you need also human capability, and human capital is really something to develop. When you don't know water, people could consider it simple. Water is more than complex. You need to have the proper engineer, you need to have the proper technician, and they cannot be only expatriate. You need to develop the local capability. After, it's nice to have investment, but do you have the proper investment? As a long-term operator, our DNA is not to build and forget, our DNA is to operate. So in a certain way, we are the partner of the state to try to fine-tune the most optimized and proper investment, to help the state to supervise the implementation of this investment, that after we can manage globally the water cycle properly. So very important to have this money, but very important to use properly this money. What is very positive in the country is the awareness at the top level of the president pushing to build this partnership between the state, between the IFI, between the private partner, and with the dimension to develop the local capability. When we try to define a setup, for example, a PPP project, we give clarity on the cost. Today, on one side, Uzbekistan could have his personal cost, the energy. On the other side, there is the IFI project with investment, but there is no free money, there is no free lunch. It will have to be repaid. And you have to sit together, Uzbekistan, the people who manage the investment project, to understand the real cost of water. If I may, value of water, I believe everybody agrees that it's priceless. No water, no population development, no economic development. The tariff, it's something different. It's a political decision, what a community, what an industry can pay. And then there is the cost of water. And it's important to be aware of this cost of water. When you work with a private partner, we bring what we call business case. So we bring clarity on the global cost of water, taking into account the production of drinkable water, the network distribution, but also the wastewater, and with the ability to develop sometime, I would say, alternative source of water. I can refer to wastewater reuse. If I may, you used to live in Singapore. You know that wastewater reuse is even reused not only for irrigation, but for potable water in Singapore. You have also desalination. But this global approach is important to have the real cost of the project. Why? Because I believe the biggest challenge is a change of mindset. A change of mindset in what you consider also as important. And what is intangible, the know-how, the ability to operate, I would say, with optimized solution is important. Often, people like to have very tangible things. They look at the contract, the number of people you put. They look at the contract, the engine you have. But what we bring with our long expertise, of course we are in France, we manage the water in La Mecca, for example, we have 40 GV in China, we bring know-how. I will just give you a short example. We are co-managing the water in Tashkent. After the first year, we manage to repair different leaks that we identify with the system we put in place. Thanks a lot, and we manage it together. To manage those leaks means that we save 25 million of cubic meter. What does it mean? It means that it's the consumption of a city of 400,000 people. But if you look at the cost of the water, in Europe, we pay in average more than €4 per cubic meter. Let's say that not a normal, but it's very difficult to speak about cost because it have to be tailored. But it's not stupid to say that drinkable water could cost up to $1 and wastewater could cost up to $1. If you save 20 million cubic meter, you save $20 million. And more than that, you implement a way to save water in the urban, I would say, area, to put good practice, to ensure that you will have the long-term resource available. Thanks a lot for your question. Thank you.
Hi, thank you very much for the invitation. I represent Almar Water. We are a Spanish company that actually invest in the projects. We work mainly in PPP type of projects. We have been following projects in Uzbekistan since around 4 years ago, mainly focused in our case in the wastewater treatment plant. We identify on one hand the need. As mentioned before, there is a huge need to treat the wastewater to be able even to reduce that water. And on the other hand, we identify a clear direction from the Uzbek government. That is very important for us, and I think for all the developers and investors here. And that is something sometimes you don't see in other countries. And we have experienced worldwide, and the lack of political willingness, a lot of times is the reason why the projects don't go ahead. In this case, you have to take that you have that, and there is a clear direction from the president. Everybody is committed to that. What is something that is important to identify for us? Money is not the issue. Money is on the table. You have private investors, development authority, multilaterals. The money is there. What you haven't got are the projects. So it's important that the projects are developed. Of course, when you see as companies as relevant as Suez or TACA, you can think, okay, leave them to develop the projects alone. That doesn't work. We think it's important that it's understood that the private companies will need the support, the guidelines of the public sector. So it will be very helpful for everybody to have maybe a couple of just single points to help us to develop the projects, to have a clear direction of the regulation, of the expectations. Of course, the tariff is critical, but the tariff is a consequence of everything that has been done before. So in our opinion, learning from other situations and taking the advantage that the regulation is there, the success of the power sector, I think that's very relevant. But as mentioned, water is different, and we need to have a clear direction in water, leading by one public entity that can coordinate with the public sector and work together with us, because we can be working alone in the projects for several years, but maybe what we are doing is not what the government expects, or maybe what we are doing is something different and doesn't match the expectations. So in our opinion, it will be very relevant to have that clear direction, also from the local governments, central governments, different ministries, and thinking that what we can bring on the table is not only money. Money is there. We need to bring the technical expertise. Our projects will be here for 20, 25, 30 years. We will be able to operate the plants, to transfer that knowledge, and the added value, it will be a lot to the water sector here.
Is it clear? Yeah. Thank you again for the question. So from TACA perspective, so TACA is a group, is part of Abu Dhabi Sovereign Wealth Fund, and we take care of all the water, from the generation all the way to treatment and to the reuse. We come here with our experience. We come with the experience that we have developed through our company, Masta, on the renewables, on the desalination, on the treatment, and many other companies that are within the ADQ group of companies. What we have seen in Uzbekistan, and it is very clear to us, their vision is to be very careful with every drop of water and to reuse it to its maximum. And to do that, there are a couple of things that we need to consider. One is on the policies, on the regulation. This is the foundation of everything. So you need to work with the policymaker and the decision makers to set clearly the standards and to incentivize the sectors to take care of the water. You work with Ustaminot, you help Ustaminot in terms of the regulation, incentivize them. For every drop of water that you save, there will be some bonus points for you to upgrade your infrastructure. Secondly, we are talking about assets that are from the Soviet era. They have done well till today, but they are not the most efficient ones. So we need to work with our client, with Ustaminot, with the private sector to modernize them and to utilize the technologies that are available. You have big companies, big names in technology that can bring AI into those assets. You will be able to monitor and view every drop, where it is going. So this is something that you need to really invest in. And finally, recycling. Today, the water, we have seen it, is going, not being used, not being utilized in big countries as well. Every drop of water needs to be reused. And this is something that we are very proud in Abu Dhabi to be able to reach 80% recycle of the TSC. We are using it in our agriculture, in our landscaping. So this is something that we have done in the desert, and we can see that there is huge potential for it here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your responses. I can tell we're starting to thin out a little because our panel is standing between these lovely people and their lunch. But I do have one more question that I want to pose to you guys, because I think it's super valuable to have all of the perspectives that we have on the stage. We're hearing from the government, we have a vision, we have a plan, we need the expertise and input from the private sector and institutions like the World Bank and Islamic Development Bank. We're hearing the money is there, but we need other things like the technical expertise, the capacity development within the country, and the business case, I think, is really important. That sometimes what stops a lot of these things from moving forward is how do we make it sustainable to make sure we get the private sector to the table. So in the interest of time, I do want to pose a final question, but I would like for it to go to the Deputy Chairman for the government perspective, Mrs. Odette for the public multilateral perspective, and to Sylvain Delaunay for the private sector perspective. And then I also invite the other panelists, if you have something to add, please feel free. We're just trying to limit it to another like 10, 15 minutes so that everybody can get to lunch. So for my final question, we'll start with you, Mr. Deputy Chairman. Based on all of these different perspectives, what is one takeaway that you have for how all of these different institutions can work together to better collaborate and improve water resource management in Uzbekistan?
Tough question, really. As a joint stock company, our company, of course, seeks about and thinking about the profit. But from the other hand, and yesterday our esteemed president also mentioned and stated about this very clearly, human dignity. We have to prioritize our approach in the realization of the projects. What is the most important? Economic viability, social accessibility, or technical modernization, and so on and so on. In order to be clear, I will give one practical example, because a number of our panelists speak about the tariffs. Tariffs is very socially, Silver told that it's a political decision. I would say that it's a social decision. Everybody knows that the tariffs here in Uzbekistan are very low. But again, should it be increase it or decrease it. It depends on the current situation of each project or of the situation itself. I will give one practical example. There was a project approved in 2011. It was in one of our regions. It was financed under the financial institution, international financial institution. And recently I looked through the feasibility study. The payback of this investment started in 2016, but tariff, which was included in the feasibility study, the amount, I mean the figure of the tariff, we didn't reach this tariff until now. But Uzbekistan always fulfills its obligation on the external debt repayment, and therefore it is a big question, a big issue for us. What is priority for us? Again, human dignity without social and without economically viable. Silver mentioned about the tariffs for €4, and really the most population of Uzbekistan is not ready to pay such tariffs.
If I may, I never speak about tariff. I speak about the cost.
Cost of the
tariff is not at all our business. We don't want to be in.
Silver, therefore, I am coming from the perspective of the government. If cost of the water is €4, then we should subsidize.
€4 is an example in France. It's not applicable to
okay.
here.
Again, it's a matter of discussion, and we always have very hot discussions on this in international financial institutions. Again, if for me as a person in charge for the economical and financial issues in our company, it's very sensitive for me. Therefore, we come to the increase of the tariffs step by step, very easily, very carefully. The other thing is, you speak also about the digitalization. Okay, smart metering and SCADA, GIS systems implementation, we will do this. Again, we have to be very careful on this. You mentioned about Karakal, Pakistan. There are some consumers in Karakal, Pakistan, which uses annually water not exceeding for $20 per year. I mean, if we deliver to it in dollars. Is it economically viable to install them smart meter equipment costs of $200? That's the main point. Therefore, I think we have to be very detailed and address it in the implementation of each project, and choosing them in an appropriate way. Thank you.
You're fully right. We have to be pragmatic in the approach. Suez is involved in the capital city, but also for projects in the region. Again, I only speak about cost. I never speak about tariff. After, what is clear when I speak about change of mindset, for example, if you look at some energy PPP, you can think, okay, I put a tariff in place, I give a territory, the private partner manage. Again, as I don't speak about tariff but cost, it has to be a relation directly with the state, because we put project in place. Water is it's a sovereign thing. It's highly sensitive. It has a social dimension. It is firstly the decision of the state. But it doesn't work by giving a territory, giving a tariff. You have to manage a solution, to render a service to the public. By the way, we don't sell water. We don't own the molecule of water. We serve water. It is the water of Uzbekistan. So you render a service, and then there is a cost for this service. And hopefully, and thanks a lot, the government is aware that those PPP cannot be the same than the PPP in energy and so on. It will be a new form. And yes, there is a delta between the tariff and the cost. And yes, hopefully, the government strategy is to support the development for the good of his population and to support with subsidies. It will take time. It took time in other countries. It's the way to implement, but it's completely different, and I agree with you. We have to be very, very careful. Everybody has to stay at its place. My place is to be on the clarity on the cost, no more, no less, but the responsibility is to operate properly, to advise you properly about what to build, to train the people. We have partnership with, for example, the Institute of Irrigation, because we want local experts, and we have to be together in the long term. So if I can conclude something, let's work out the proper pipeline of priority, and that again is the state decision. Let's be all around the table in consortium with the IFI to be able to approach the water problem, tailor them for the big city with global operation. For place where the water is coming today with truck, no need to put smart meter, but already let's put in place a place to deliver water instead of bringing it by truck. So let's be pragmatic, but let's progress. Thanks a lot.
Okay, I see the private sector is eager to take over. That's a good sign, I guess.
Together, never over.
It's okay. That's a good sign. Anyway, I mean, to conclude on my side, I want to again stress on partnerships, but it should be a partnership that brings value, and I think that's where there's a little bit of work that we need to do in Uzbekistan, especially when it comes to private capital mobilization. It should be real capital, private capital mobilization, not a private sector engagement that puts a burden on the government. And I think it's important to stress that. So as we build these partnerships, I think on the government side, it's important to work on information, especially about the assets. That's a major bottleneck here. And I know the government is already taking steps in that direction. It's going to help a lot, but also in the operating framework. And that means the regulations, but also the performance management systems. If you're bringing a private partner, you need to give boundaries as to, okay, for this money, you need to help us achieve this level of service. And if you don't achieve this level of service, these are the potential penalties or whatever. In any case, the rules of the game needs to be clear, and that's something I think the Usu-Taminot needs to work on with the different government entities. I think on the financier side, apart, of course, for bringing you financing and helping you with that, we can assist you with knowledge and enabling infrastructure that then opens the space for private sector to fill in where there is sort of value addition from bringing private sector. And we can also provide you with guarantees. As you know, like the World Bank Group has several institutions within it. And these days, our MEGA institution is offering different types of guarantees that can go to private sector, but can also go to the government. And that helps sort of de-risking the market, both in terms of the solutions, but also de-risking in terms of the finance. Now, for the private sector, apart from what I stressed earlier, think about your value proposition when you're joining this partnership. Can you actually bring, new money into the table instead of, tapping into what is already public financing? And if you can do that, that certainly is going to help. Can you bring innovation to the table? Can you bring efficiency? And when I talk about efficiency, we were having this discussion about tariff and cost. A lot of it is about efficiency and how you can bring solutions that enable you to deliver a service at a lower cost and still achieve the same results. And you can do that. And finally, for the private sector, I think you can also help with the governance systems. in the end, all of this that we're discussing and linked to what Khurshid said, it's about serving the people. So transparency, customer services, make the people happy. I have seen elsewhere in the world, and even in Uzbekistan, where the one that you consider the poorest is paying for the service if the service is there and they feel that there is a service. So part of your work is to create that environment where I, as a poor, feel that I do have a service and I have to pay for that service to continue to be provided. Thank you.
Yeah, if you allow me just one sec. And that's, we make a survey in one of Western African countries, willingness to pay. And we realized that the poorer people were willing to pay more for the water if they actually have safe water. And that can be one of the problems here. You cannot request the people to pay for a service they don't get. Whenever you are ready to provide safe water, access to wastewater, I'm sure there will be a willingness to pay. And of course, our task is to deliver a good service. If not, there will not be solution.
Are there any final thoughts before I close this out? All right. So in summary, what I've heard from this excellent panel here today, with all of these different experiences across improving water management and resource efficiency, is we have the awareness of the problem, but we need a plan that the government is working on as we speak that is both ambitious but also pragmatic. You don't want to find solutions that aren't going to be sustainable over time. We do need partnerships across all of our different sectors, but those partnerships are about more than just money. They're also about having the right projects, developing human capital, and getting clarity on the actual cost and assets that are available. And lastly, we need a proper role sort between our different sectors to make sure that we're complementing everything that each other is doing and making it the most effective. And this is how, in the long term, we can help facilitate better water security for Uzbekistan. I'd like to invite you all to give a round of applause to our panelists. Thank you so much for joining us today and being patient as we got started, and I hope you enjoy your lunch and the rest of this event.